Hello there. I am Esteban S, the head and CEO of the CBRA. In case you haven't heard of our esteemed organization, CBRA stands for Charge Bias Research Association. Charge bias is a terrible new disease sweeping the world. Our lead scientist, me, is saying it's worse than the Black Plague. This disease affects the human nervous system to an irreparable degree. It cripples the victim's cerebral cortex and replaces normal human thoughts with thoughts of the charge status effect from the hit gacha game Limbus Company. I have found that this terrible affliction can infect all people, but has targeted one group in particular: the developers at Project Moon. Their case of charge bias seems to be growing at an alarming rate, with their brains clearly deteriorating to such a degree where almost every new piece of content must contain charge, even if it makes literally no sense. The most egregious case is unfurling right before our very eyes. My astute team of researchers have uncovered information about an upcoming piece of content, once again infected by charge. And it's a big one. The central ego of Season 3, the one on every piece of marketing, is a charge ego. This cannot stand. If you are determined to fight against the spreading of charge, be sure to join our organization via the form down below. I now pass on the conversation to our resident analyst of the House of Anti-Charge Representatives, Escu. Thank you, Esteban. Now, you may or may not know this already, but I don't like charge. I think it's oversaturated, and there is simply too much of it. If you don't believe me, I have a whole video on it. So imagine my horror, nay my disdain, when I learned that this ego was partially a charge ego. I was confused, upset, and I went through Dabda, if you know what I mean. So while I prepare myself to make a video on my worst IDs in Railway Run, I figured I would give my thoughts on this ego as a whole. Though I should disclaim beforehand, this is from leaked information, and it is subject to change. However, I am confident that most of the fundamentals will remain the same. So, blindness/ignorance. It is a pride-pierce ego, for some reason, despite the animation not really piercing the enemies at all, outside of the lightning bolts, I guess, but really, we need more /AoE ego, so this was already a point of disappointment for me, but whatever. Pride is fine, we honestly need more gluttony ego, but Lantern Sinclair will be coming out the day of this video, so whatever. Let's talk about what really matters: the effects. First of all, the 20 SP heal after attack. This is an insanely good effect. Since this ego costs 30 sanity, this will refund over half of it back to Ishmael, and with no reliance on heads hit, unlike something like Sunshower Yi Sang. Speaking of Sunshower Yi Sang, which is only 10 resources, this is also only 10 resources, which is surprising, since this ego is a significant step up in power. What exactly makes it so strong? Well, this next effect, giving plus coin boost to all allies for this turn and next turn. As soon as I saw this effect, I knew this ego truly was on a different level to something like Sunshower Yi Sang. There is a lot of fantastic synergy here to talk about, but let me just talk about the Ishmael self-synergy with this ego first. With her base ID. What? Sounds crazy, right? But hear me out. This ID is really fast for some reason, and since the plus coin boost lasts for 2 turns as soon as you fire it off, it is best to get it off as quickly as possible, as to get as much value out of it as possible. Of course, you don't get nearly as much value out of it because you are using base Ishmael, who only has single coin skills. However, if you are more so looking to increase your team coin power, then base Ishmael might honestly be a consideration. LCCB, She, and Molar Boatworks Ishmael all gain a decent benefit, with LCCB having a lot of coins and being decently fast. She Ishmael is all about the flashing strike benefit, making it a massive 25 roller next turn. However, she suffers from a painfully below average speed range of 2 to 5. And Molar has an average speed range of 3 to 6, and a good amount of coins all around. She also has the benefit of fueling it very well. However, I think the other 2 Ishmaels are the best users of this ego: Reindeer and Leo Ishmael. Reindeer, due to being the fastest Ishmael outside of base, and the other effect that we'll talk about. The only downside of using Reindeer is her skill 2 gains very little from the plus coin boost, but if you can line up a Mind Whip, that is a Mind Whip that rolls for 30 total on all heads hit, which is just insane. Her skill 1 would also roll a 16, officially pushing it to the level of your average 3-star skill 2. Then there is Leo Ishmael, who is probably the most fun user of the ego. She doesn't fuel it very well, but you're likely running a burn team with her, meaning that the Liu IDs, who generally have high amount of coins, especially on their skill 3s, can have absolutely insanely fun turns of rolling far higher than they should. Even assuming you don't line up the perfect turn, this fixes the Liu ID's main problem of lacking some fundamental clashing power for 2-ish turns. Of course, Liu Ishmael is also all about boosting her own coin power, so doubling down on that sounds like a great time. Alright, that was a lot to talk about with just the Ishmaels themselves using the coin boost, but let's talk about how the other team members can use the plus coin boost. As I mentioned, the Liu IDs, Gregor especially, enjoy the nice +1 to coin power. On the contrary, Claire and Sunshine Heathcliff gain no benefit from this. But we will talk about them when discussing the Corrosion. Look, I would love to list off various IDs that gain some really cool benefits from this, like Chef Ryosho in her skill 3. Going from a 15 to a 19 is really good, especially on a skill that does so much damage like that one. Or Molar Sinclair with his skill 1. This is one I've not seen people talk about, but you can roll a 14 with his skill 1 and it's 4 coins. That's kind of insane. But guess who actually benefits the most? It's Charge. They have a lot of coins on their nukes, so Rabbit Heathcliff, W. Marceau, Warp Ryoshu, and Warp Dawn all get insanely good benefits from this, with the one downside being their lack of sloth resource gain, which is quickly offset by simply adding Zwei Gregor, who gains very good benefit from the plus coin boost as well. Then just add on another damage juggernaut like the soon-to-be-released Olga Otis. Probably already released by the time I make this video, but whatever. So yeah, this ego is really cool and all with the plus coin boost, but it's upsetting that it pushes Charge harder than ever before, simply by merit of them having the most coins out of any team composition in the game and already being insanely strong. Of course, syncing with Spicebush Iseng, Daiichi Rodian, and Boatworks Ishmael are also feeling pretty good, with their high amount of coins, and then you realize that the two biggest archetypes just got boosted to insane levels by this ego. And while it helps the other IDs too, of course, nothing here really helps the worst IDs in the game. It simply pushes the already great IDs. This is made worse by the elephant in the room. On hit, gain +3 charge count. On a 5 attack weight ego, meaning 15 charge in an ideal scenario for Reindeer Ishmael. The only other on-hit effect? Bind, meaning me calling this a charge ego is pretty fair, since it is half of the on-hit effects. Anyways, that's enough talk about how Charge is just being buffed with every new thing being added. Let's talk about the Corrosion version of this ego. This one is interesting, but not nearly as interesting as the Awakening in my opinion. After attack, all allies lose 15 SP. Now, that might sound bad, and it is for the majority of IDs, but for Claire and especially Suncliff, this is actually a nice head start. Especially combined with the next line, which gives minus coin drop to all allies. This means that Suncliff and Claire will be punished far less for hitting heads, and Suncliff really appreciates this buff. In my video talking about everything related to him, my proposed buffs for him essentially just gave him this effect. So added consistency for Suncliff is always very nice. Then lastly, this heals by 3% of Ishmael's max HP on hit, meaning on 5 targets, this is a 15% heal, or a very expensive and inconsistent fluid sac. And then inflicts 3 bind instead of 2. This Corrosion is overall fine. The numbers are supposedly lower too, but I've actually heard a lot of numbers thrown around for this ego and seen a lot of numbers for this ego, so that's why I haven't mentioned the actual floors and coin power. The buff to negative Sandy IDs is cool to see though, and makes me hopeful that we can see more negative Sandy IDs in the future. Perhaps ones that have -1 coins, and this ego will make it so they have -0, guaranteeing that they stay at their floors. Then the passive. This is actually really cool, and I like it a lot because it feels truly unique. This inflicts sinking on the lowest HP ally, and then inflicts haste and offense level up to them next turn. This is a massive buff to Sunshine Heathcliff if you can manage to get it on him, since it means he can clash freely and still reliably lose at least 5 sanity the next turn. So if you get him in a nice sweet spot, you can maintain it quite easily with the passive, and the Corrosion already gets you down in sanity. Outside of that, the haste and offense level up are just strong effects, with the stipulation of not wanting to be hit. The lowest HP ally is likely a squishy ID who doesn't want to get hit anyways, or a low health tank, in which case both can benefit from the extra speed and offense level, like any ID could. And that's everything about the Ishmael ego covered, at least everything I have decently reliable information on. Again, hard to know for sure, especially when things are subject to change. Overall though, am I disappointed by this ego? this isn't quite the word I would use. I am continually disappointed by how much bias charge has, and to a lesser extent now, sinking also has some bias. Ignoring the stupid charge on hit, whatever, I spent long enough being mad about that to the point where I'm numb to it, but the plus coin boost, I don't think it was meant to be unfairly better for charge IDs, that's just kind of how it worked out, which is a more fundamental design flaw. IDs with fewer coins will be more and more left behind if more ego like this are introduced, which I think is really unfortunate, honestly. IDs like Otis will still have a use, but I would much rather see an ego, especially a WoW ego like this is, really bring something new to the IDs that are less good in their current state, instead of just continuing to push charge even harder than before. Also, as much as I hate charge getting cool things, this should have been where charge gets a cool new debuff instead of just charge on hit. Like a lightning rod debuff, where when hit by an enemy with charge on them, 20% of the damage is transferred to another enemy. Or well, an additional 20% damage. Or literally anything else unique, besides lazily slapping charge in places it doesn't need to be. I'm really sick of it, and was hopeful we wouldn't see anything else charge related for a while, but here it is, at the helm of Season 3, looming over me, like always. Now, I didn't want this to just be a rant about charge again. I did that already, but really, upon seeing this ego's effects, I feel genuinely justified in being concerned that charge will continue to get ego after ego and support after support, especially because this is the main ego of Season 3. I mentioned how sinking has also been given a bit too much, but really this should have been a sinking ego. And while it is via the passive, I mean a full-fledged sinking ego. It is an anchor, for God's sake. If that doesn't inflict sinking, I don't know what should. I guess a giant iceberg castle thing, if Rhymeshank's anything to go by, that's what makes a sinking ego. But still, I don't know how to fix the problem of single coin IDs being left behind in a sense, especially with effects like these making multi-coin IDs even more enticing, but I hope we see something soon. Hey, maybe Singleton will be all about buffing single coin skills, though I have my doubts. Either way, thank you for watching. At the very least, I hope this video gave some insight into why I think my concerns about charge are justified. And if you agree, be sure to join the CBRA now and stand up against the charge bias infected individuals of the world. This totally legal propaganda ends